The next few days passed quietly, yet something inside them had changed. There was a new kind of peace, fragile but real. The laughter that returned wasn't the same as before. It was softer, more meaningful, carrying a weight of shared truth behind every smile. Eve walked into the room one morning, the sunlight spilling across the floor like a gentle spotlight. He paused for a moment, taking it all in. The sound of quiet chatter, the smell of coffee, the warmth of familiar faces. He realized that these little moments, the unspoken ones, were the ones that truly mattered. Seojun noticed him standing there and grinned. "Feeling better?" he asked casually, though his tone was laced with care. V smiled, this time without hesitation. "Yeah," he said softly. "Thanks to you guys." There was no grand speech, no dramatic exchange, just a few words that carried the weight of everything that had happened. Later, when the group gathered again, Hyungsik playfully nudged V. "You know," he said, "you scared us for a second back there." V chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sorry," he said. "Guess I forgot how to hide my emotions." Jungkook looked at him and replied quietly, "You shouldn't have to." That line, simple, sincere, hung in the air for a moment. It was the kind of truth that everyone felt but rarely said out loud. In that silence, they all understood. Being strong doesn't mean never breaking. It means trusting that when you do, there's someone there to catch you. As the afternoon went on, they shared stories about the past, the struggles, the quiet fears that came with the spotlight. They laughed over silly memories and sighed over the hard ones. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was about being honest. And sometimes honesty is all you need to start healing. When the cameras rolled again for another project, something was different about their energy. The way V looked at Jungkook, the way Seojun smiled at Hyungsik, it was as if that silent night had tied them together with invisible threads of understanding. There was depth in their expressions, a quiet bond that couldn't be faked or scripted. During a break, the director whispered to an assistant, "There's something special about them today. You can feel it, like they're shining from the inside." And he was right. Because sometimes, the most powerful performances come not from acting, but from truth. Behind the laughter, behind the music and the stage lights, there's always a story of friendship, of pain, of learning to lean on one another. And that story is what truly touches hearts. Later that night, when the set was quiet again, V found himself alone on stage. He looked out at the empty seats, thousands of them, and for a moment, he could still hear the echoes of cheers and applause. But now he also heard something else, the faint heartbeat of peace. He sat down, his guitar resting beside him, and began strumming a soft melody, one that spoke of letting go, of finding light after the storm. Each note carried emotion, grief, gratitude, and hope intertwined like poetry. And though no one was there to hear it, that song wasn't meant for an audience. It was meant for his heart. In the dressing room later, Jungkook walked in, half asleep, holding a cup of tea. "You're still here?" he asked. V smiled without looking up. "Yeah, just finishing something I started." Jungkook nodded. It sounded beautiful. They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea and watching the lights fade across the empty stage. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just peaceful. Because sometimes the quietest moments carry the deepest meaning. Before they left, Jungkook said softly, "You know, Hyung, I think that's what makes you special. You don't just perform, you feel." V turned to him and smiled, eyes gentle and full of gratitude. "Maybe," he said, "but I think that's what makes us special." And as they walked out together, side by side, the camera that had been quietly recording in the corner caught it all. Two silhouettes walking under the soft glow of backstage lights, their laughter blending with the fading echoes of the day. It wasn't a dramatic ending. It wasn't meant to be. It was simply real, raw, human, and deeply moving. Because in the end, what stays with us are not the performances or the applause, but the moments in between. The tear that falls unseen, the hand that reaches out in silence, the smile that says, "I'm still here." That night, the world outside went on as usual. Bright lights, busy streets, endless noise. But inside that quiet space, a piece of something eternal had been born. A reminder that even the brightest stars need the night to shine. Sometimes love between friends doesn't need words. It just exists. Hyungsik reached over, his hand steady and warm, giving V's shoulder a gentle squeeze. It was the kind of gesture that says, "You don't have to carry this alone." And Seojun, he just smiled faintly, eyes glistening, knowing that this quiet vulnerability was more beautiful than any performance they had ever given. There was a deep stillness then, the kind that only happens when souls understand each other completely. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. No cameras, no scripts, no expectations, just four friends sharing a heartbeat, bound by something deeper than fame. Later that evening, when the lights were off and the crowd was gone, V sat quietly by the window. The city glowed beneath him, distant and alive. He thought about the laughter, the cheers, the endless noise that filled his days, and yet how rare it was to find silence that truly comforted him. He closed his eyes. The memory of Jungkook's quiet touch and Seojun's calm presence replayed in his mind. That moment wasn't about sadness anymore. It was about release. Sometimes you don't cry because you're weak. You cry because you've been strong for too long. Somewhere in the hallway, Jungkook passed by and saw him sitting there. He didn't say much, just sat beside him in silence. They watched the lights together, two silhouettes against the night sky, two souls who didn't need to fill the air with words. "Hyung," Jungkook said softly after a while. "It's okay to let go sometimes. You don't always have to smile." V turned to look at him, his eyes tired but gentle. "I know," he whispered. "But sometimes I forget that I'm allowed to." That exchange, quiet, fleeting, was worth more than 1,000 speeches. Because real friendship doesn't demand perfection. It accepts the cracks, the flaws, the moments when you break. The next morning, when they gathered again, the atmosphere felt lighter, like rain had fallen during the night, washing away the weight that had hung in the air. There were smiles again, but softer ones, smiles that carried understanding, not just joy. Hyungsik made a small joke, and everyone laughed, not to cover up emotion, but to celebrate it. Because now they all knew, behind every tear there's a story of strength. Behind every silence, there's a heart that fought quietly to be okay. And though the cameras would never fully capture that depth, those who were there, those who felt it, would remember forever. Not as a sad memory, but as a proof of something rare. True connection. It was a reminder that no matter how high they climb, no matter how loud the applause gets, they will always need moments like this. Moments that bring them back to who they really are. So when the lights turned back on, when laughter filled the room once again, there was a new kind of warmth among them. One built not just on friendship, but on understanding, on honesty, on the quiet promise that says, "I see you. I'm here. Always." Because sometimes the strongest bonds are not built on laughter or shared success, but on the moments when tears fall, and no one looks away. And maybe that's what made this moment so unforgettable. It wasn't grand or dramatic or staged. It was simply human. Painfully, beautifully human. And as the day faded into night once more, V looked around at the faces of his friends and smiled. This time, without fear, without pretending. Because he knew, as long as they had each other, They would never face their darkness alone.